Beneath the pages of every history book lies an entire world we've forgotten. While we study the rise and fall of empires like Rome and Egypt, countless societies thrived and vanished long before the first written word. These aren't just footnotes, they're entire chapters of humanity erased by time. Today, we're peeling back the layers of history to reveal 25 astonishing civilizations you won't find in any textbook. From sprawling cities hidden beneath jungles to advanced cultures that mastered technology millennia ahead of their time, we're piecing together their stories through buried artifacts, satellite imaging, and breakthroughs in science. These weren't primitive societies, they were pioneers, innovators, and visionaries whose legacies whisper to us through the earth itself. And what they're telling us will change how you see human history forever. Long before the pyramids scraped the skies of Egypt, a forgotten people in the Balkan Peninsula were laying the foundations of civilization as we know it. The Vinca culture, thriving between 5,700 and 4,500 BCE, wasn't just surviving, they were innovating. Picture this: villages with multi-room houses, tools crafted from copper, and a script etched into clay that predates the earliest Sumerian writing by 2,000 years. These markings, discovered on pottery and figurines, aren't random scratches, they're a tantalizing glimpse of what might be the world's first writing system. But here's the mystery: despite their advancements, the Vinca people vanished without explanation. No invasion, no natural disaster, just silence. Some speculate their symbols influenced later cultures, whispering across millennia into the birth of European alphabets. Others believe their metallurgical knowledge, like smelting copper, spread through trade networks, sparking the dawn of the Metal Ages. What we do know: this wasn't a society clinging to survival. They traded across vast distances, worshipped enigmatic goddess figurines, and may have even pioneered early urban planning. Yet their story remains half-buried, waiting for the next discovery to rewrite what we thought we knew about humanity's first steps toward civilization. High in the arid coastal plains of Peru, an ancient society defied the odds and rewrote the rules of civilization. While most early cultures clung to fertile river valleys, the Norte Chico people flourished between 3,500 and 1,800 BCE in a landscape so harsh, archaeologists once assumed it was uninhabitable. Yet here they built towering stone platforms and sprawling ceremonial centers, all without two staples we associate with early civilizations: pottery and elaborate art. What made them extraordinary wasn't just what they lacked, it was what they invented. Instead of relying on rivers, they engineered an intricate system of canals and springs to irrigate crops, turning desert into farmland. Their monumental structures, like the sacred city of Caral with its 6 pyramidal temples, weren't just feats of engineering. They were the heartbeat of a society that traded cotton for fish with coastal communities, creating one of history's first economic networks. Scholars call them the mother culture of the Andes for a reason. Their influence rippled through later civilizations like the Chavin and even the Inca, embedding ideas about urban planning, religion, and social hierarchy that lasted for millennia. But the Norte Chico's greatest mystery: how a civilization with no written language, no war imagery, and no flashy artifacts became the blueprint for an entire continent, all while whispering their secrets through the stones they left behind. 7,000 years before modern dentists drilled into teeth, a forgotten civilization in what is now Pakistan was already mastering the art. The people of Mehrgarh, thriving between 7,000 and 2,600 BCE, weren't just early farmers, they were pioneers of medicine, agriculture, and urban living. Nestled in the foothills of the Indus Valley, this settlement reveals a society far ahead of its time, with tools for drilling human teeth, sophisticated irrigation systems, and possibly the earliest known use of cotton. What makes Mehrgarh extraordinary isn't just its innovations, it's the shadow it casts over history. Archaeologists believe this culture laid the groundwork for the later Harappan civilization, one of the world's first great urban societies. The similarities are uncanny: brick architecture, intricate trade networks, even early forms of writing. But the burning question remains, were the Mehrgarh people ancestors of the Harappans, or did they vanish, leaving only their knowledge behind? Digging deeper reveals more mysteries. Their society shows no signs of sudden collapse, no invasion, no natural disaster. Instead, their settlements slowly transformed, blending into new cultural phases. Some believe they simply evolved, their traditions absorbed by later civilizations. Others argue their disappearance hints at migration or environmental shifts lost to time. What's undeniable, these forgotten innovators didn't just live. They built the foundation for a cultural revolution that shaped South Asia for millennia. While Mesopotamia and Egypt dominated the ancient world, two astonishing cultures quietly reshaped Europe's prehistoric landscape. The Cucuteni-Trypillia civilization, stretching across modern-day Romania, Moldova, and Ukraine, constructed settlements so vast they rivaled early Mesopotamian cities. Imagine walking through a metropolis of 15,000 people, Neolithic apartment complexes stretching across hundreds of acres, their plastered walls painted in vivid spirals and serpent motifs. Yet every 60 to 80 years, these thriving communities did something baffling. They burned their cities to the ground, not in war, not by accident, ritualistically, deliberately, layer after layer of ash revealing generations rebuilding atop the ashes. Was this a religious rebirth, a way to purify the land? The answer remains: buried with them. Meanwhile, near the Black Sea coast, the Varna culture was rewriting history in shimmering gold. 4,500 years before Egypt's pharaohs ruled, their craftsmen were fashioning gold ornaments of staggering sophistication: beads, bracelets, even a ceremonial penis sheath found in a chieftain's grave. But it's cemetery Varna that stunned archaeologists. A single burial held more gold than the entire rest of the prehistoric world combined at that time. This wasn't just wealth, it was a society with stratified classes, artisans specializing in metallurgy, and a belief system that saw gold as sacred. Their graves tell stories of warriors, priests, and even a possible queen adorned in golden diadems, her skeleton flanked by intricate clay masks. What ties these cultures together? Both vanished without clear conquest or collapse. The Cucuteni-Trypillia's burning ceased, Varna's goldworking techniques seemingly evaporated. Some theories suggest climate shifts or migrations absorbed their innovations into later European cultures. But one truth lingers: these weren't backwaters. They were powerhouses of art, technology, and social complexity, proof that ancient Europe's brilliance burned bright long before history's spotlight found it. Far to the east, along the marshy deltas of the Yangtze River, an ancient society mastered both earth and water with astonishing precision. The Liangzhu civilization, thriving between 3,300 and 2,300 BCE, didn't just build cities, they engineered entire landscapes. Picture vast earthen walls encircling a metropolis crisscrossed by canals, their hydraulic systems so advanced they could control floods and irrigate fields with mathematical precision. This wasn't just survival, it was a symphony of human ingenuity harmonizing with nature. But what truly defined the Liangzhu was their obsession with jade. Unlike gold or silver, this luminous green stone held spiritual significance, carved into intricate ritual objects, discs symbolizing the heavens, tubes representing the earth. Workshops mass-produced these artifacts with standardized designs, suggesting a shared belief system across their territory. Their craftsmanship was so refined that later Chinese dynasties, millennia afterward, would regard Liangzhu jades as sacred heirlooms. Then, suddenly, the music stopped. Around 2300 BCE, their cities emptied, their canals silted over. Climate data reveals catastrophic flooding events, monsoon rains drowning their carefully managed waterways. Some scholars believe the Liangzhu weren't just victims of nature but architects of their own demise, their deforestation for rice paddies exacerbating the floods. Others theorize internal strife or shifting trade routes played a role. What's undeniable, their legacy lived on. Elements of Liangzhu culture, their reverence for jade, their emphasis on water control echo in the Shang and Zhou dynasties, hinting that China's first imperial rulers may have walked in the footsteps of these forgotten masters of the wetlands. While the pyramids rose along the Nile, another monumental civilization was shaping the Americas, one that defied all expectations. The Caral-Supe people didn't just build cities, they designed them with precision that would make modern urban planners envious. Between 3000 and 1800 BC, their sprawling complex in the Supe Valley boasted sunken plazas, amphitheaters, and 6 massive pyramidal structures, all aligned with celestial events. This wasn't random construction, it was a masterclass in harmony between architecture, astronomy, and society. What set them apart wasn't just their buildings, but how they thrived without war. Unlike other ancient cultures, Caral-Supe's ruins show no fortifications, no weapons, no depictions of conquest. Instead, they left behind traces of something far more revolutionary: quipu. These knotted cords weren't mere strings, they were a sophisticated recording system, possibly the earliest form of writing in the Americas, used for trade, calendars, and even storytelling. Each knot's position and style held meaning, a language without ink that connected distant communities across the Andes. Their influence stretched far beyond their valley. Shells from the coast, vibrant feathers from the rainforest, and even hallucinogenic seeds found in Carol's temples reveal a trade network as vast as it was intricate. Some scholars believe they weren't just traders but cultural ambassadors, spreading ideas about governance and spirituality that later civilizations like the Chavin would inherit. Yet their greatest marvel might be their collapse: no evidence of violence, no signs of catastrophe, just a gradual fading, as if they simply stepped aside when their time was done. Climate shifts may have played a role, but perhaps their true legacy lies in proving that a civilization could flourish not through conquest, but through cooperation, innovation, and an unshakable connection to the stars above the desert. Sandwiched between the mighty rivers of Mesopotamia and the rugged highlands of Persia, one civilization quietly built an empire that stood toe-to-toe with history's earliest superpowers. The Elamites, flourishing from 3200 to 539 BC, weren't just neighbors to Sumer and Akkad. They were rivals, trading partners, and sometimes conquerors. Their capital, Susa, was a glittering hub of innovation where scribes developed one of the world's first writing systems, Elamite cuneiform, distinct from anything in Mesopotamia. But what set them apart wasn't just their script, it was their sheer endurance. While other kingdoms rose and fell, Elam weathered invasions, adapted to shifting powers, and even sacked Babylon twice, proving their military and political savvy. Yet for all their achievements, Elam remains overshadowed. Their ziggurats rivaled Mesopotamia's, their artisans crafted exquisite metalwork, and their legal codes influenced later Persian rulers. Archaeologists have uncovered sprawling temples, intricate cylinder seals, and even evidence of early dental surgery. But perhaps their greatest legacy was cultural fusion. Elam acted as a bridge between Mesopotamia and the Indus Valley, blending ideas and goods across continents long before the Silk Road existed. Now shift southeast to the dusty plains of modern Iran, where a discovery in the early 2000s sent shockwaves through archaeology. The Jiroft culture, dating back to 3000 BC, left behind a trove of ornate chlorite vessels carved with mythical creatures and geometric patterns, artifacts so refined they sparked debates about a lost Mesopotamian civilization. Even more tantalizing, an undeciphered script etched into their artifacts, unlike any known writing system from the era. Some scholars argue Jiroft was the legendary Aratta, a wealthy kingdom mentioned in Sumerian poetry. Others dismiss it as an elaborate regional culture. the truth may lie in the middle. Jiroft's artifacts reveal trade links stretching from the Indus Valley to the Persian Gulf, suggesting a society far more connected than previously imagined. Their intricate artistry, serpentine designs, towering stepped platforms hints at a sophisticated belief system. But with most of their sites looted before proper excavation, Jiroft's full story remains buried, leaving us to wonder, were they a forgotten empire or merely one thread in a much larger tapestry of early human achievement? Either way, both Elam and Jiroft remind us that the ancient Middle East wasn't just Mesopotamia's stage. It was a chorus of civilizations, each singing their own forgotten verse in humanity's earliest epic. Deep in the forests of modern-day Nigeria, a civilization thrived with artistic brilliance and technological mastery at a time when much of the world was still in its infancy. The Nok culture emerged around 1500 BC, centuries before Rome was founded, and left behind a legacy that still baffles archaeologists today. Their most striking creations, exquisitely detailed terracotta sculptures, human and animal figures with intricate hairstyles, jewelry, and expressions so lifelike they seem to breathe across millennia. But these weren't mere decorations. Each sculpture tells a story of identity, spirituality, or social status, offering rare glimpses into a world without written records. What makes the Nok truly revolutionary is what they forged alongside their art. While Europe was deep in the Bronze Age, these West African innovators discovered ironworking completely independently. No outside influence, no borrowed knowledge. Their furnaces reached temperatures high enough to smelt ore, producing tools and weapons that would have been the envy of contemporary cultures. This wasn't just technical skill. It was a leap of human ingenuity that challenges old assumptions about where and how metallurgy developed. Then, around 500 CE, their villages fell silent. No invasion layers, no signs of famine, just abandoned furnaces and unfinished sculptures. Some theories point to climate shifts or overuse of resources, but the truth remains buried. What's undeniable is their influence. Traces of Nok artistic styles appear in later West African kingdoms like Ife and Benin, suggesting their ideas outlasted their civilization. Their disappearance remains one of history's quietest mysteries, leaving us to wonder, did they vanish or simply evolve into something new? Their legacy cast not in crumbling clay, but in the cultural DNA of an entire continent. Nestled between the Caribbean coast and the towering Sierra Nevada mountains, the Terona civilization built a world of stone that defied both jungle and conquerors. From 200 to 1600 CE, their terraced cities clung to steep slopes like stairways to the heavens, connected by paved roads and aqueducts so precise they'd make Roman engineers take notes. But their genius wasn't just in infrastructure, it was in gold. Terona artisans crafted pendants so intricate they seemed alive. Jaguars mid-leap, shamans transforming into bats, serpents coiled with symbolic precision. These weren't decorations, they were wearable prayers, each piece a conduit between earth and spirit. When Spanish ships appeared on the horizon in the 1500s, the Terona didn't just resist, they vanished. Unlike the Aztec or Inca, they refused surrender, melting into the cloud forests with their knowledge intact. Their descendants, the Kogi people, still inhabit those mist-shrouded peaks today, calling themselves the elder brothers of humanity. Living much as their ancestors did, they weaved narratives of the Terona's golden era into their rituals, warning that modern exploitation of the earth repeats the mistakes that toppled mighty civilizations. Archaeologists are just beginning to decode Terona's secrets, their celestial calendar-aligned temples, their trade networks spanning continents, but the real revelation. Their survival. While Spanish records declared them extinct, the Kogi kept their language, their oral histories, even their gold-working techniques hidden for centuries. In their isolation, they preserved something rare, an unbroken thread to a civilization that chose obscurity over obliteration, proving some legacies aren't left in ruins, they're carried forward in the whispered wisdom of those who remember. In the fertile Chengdu plain of ancient China, a civilization thrived in near-total obscurity until the ground cracked open to reveal their secrets. The Sanxingdui culture, flourishing alongside the Shang dynasty between 1600 and 1046 BCE, crafted artifacts so bizarre they seem ripped from mythology. Picture bronze masks with bulging, trumpet-shaped eyes stretching toward the heavens, faces frozen in expressions that defy human anatomy, golden staffs topped with bird-headed deities. A towering bronze tree reaching nearly 13 feet tall, its branches heavy with celestial fruit and coiled dragons. This wasn't just art, it was a window into a spiritual world utterly unlike anything else in ancient China. What stuns archaeologists isn't just their craftsmanship but their isolation. While the Shang dynasty left behind meticulous oracle bone records, Sanxingdui vanishes from history, no mentions in text, no obvious cultural links. Their bronze technology was arguably superior, using advanced alloy mixtures that produced gleaming, corrosion-resistant sculptures. Yet they buried their greatest treasures in ritual pits, carefully arranged then sealed, as if hiding them from time itself. Theories swirl around their disappearance. Some suggest catastrophic flooding forced their relocation. Others point to internal revolt or absorption by neighboring cultures. But the most haunting clue lies in the pit's smashed artifacts, deliberately broken before burial. Was this ritual killing of objects part of a farewell ceremony? Or did Sanxingdui's people, sensing their end, choose to bury their legacy rather than let it fade? One truth remains: their influence may have outlasted their name. Stylistic echoes appear in later Shu Kingdom artifacts, hinting that Sanxingdui's vision wasn't erased, just transformed. Their ghostly masks now stare from museum cases, silent witnesses to a civilization that mastered metal, worshipped the cosmos, and then vanished, leaving behind not a single written word, only mysteries cast in bronze. Beneath the turquoise waters of the Mediterranean, a civilization once pulsed with such vibrancy that its echoes still ripple through time. The Minoans didn't just inhabit Crete, they transformed it into a maritime empire unrivaled in the Bronze Age. Long before their legendary palaces like Knossos dazzled the ancient world, their roots stretch back to shadowy beginnings around 3500 BCE. Where did they come from? Genetic clues suggest a fusion of Neolithic Anatolian farmers and seafaring migrants, creating a culture distinct from mainland Greece. Their earliest settlements reveal something extraordinary: circular communal tombs where entire villages buried their dead together, a practice hinting at a society built on shared ancestry rather than rigid hierarchy. Then there's the Phaistos disc, a clay enigma that's taunted linguists for over a century. Covered in spiraling symbols stamped with precision, it's one of the world's oldest printed texts, predating movable type by 3 millennia. Some believe it's a hymn, others a legal code. What's certain, no one's cracked it yet. The symbols resemble nothing else in the ancient world, as if the Minoans invented then abandoned their own form of communication. We've all heard how the Thera eruption devastated their cities, but that's only part of the story. Yes, tsunamis swallowed coastal towns around 1600 BCE, but Minoan culture persisted for centuries after. Their true undoing may have been a slow, unraveling trade networks collapsing as Egypt and Mesopotamia turned inward, climate shifts withering olive harvests, and perhaps even internal strife. By the time Mycenaeans arrived from mainland Greece, the Minoans' vibrant frescoes of leaping dolphins and serpent goddesses had faded into legend, yet their legacy lingers in unexpected places. Their fluid, nature-inspired art influenced Greek aesthetics, their labyrinthine palace layouts inspired later myths, and their egalitarian treatment of women, evidenced in frescoes showing female priests and athletes, stands in stark contrast to neighboring patriarchal societies. The Minoans remind us that some civilizations don't truly die. They dissolve into the cultural bloodstream of history, waiting to be rediscovered one fresco fragment at a time. In the vast deserts between Turkmenistan and Afghanistan, where the Amu Darya River once nourished the land, an enigmatic civilization rose, one so influential that its echoes might have shaped religions and trade routes for millennia. The Oxus civilization, also known as the Bactria-Margiana archaeological complex, built fortress-like cities with towering walls and labyrinthine corridors between 2300 and 1700 BC. But these weren't just defensive structures, they were hubs of innovation, where artisans crafted intricate chlorite vessels, and metallurgists pioneered advanced bronze alloys while much of the world still relied on stone. What sets them apart isn't just their craftsmanship, but their spiritual footprint. Deep within their citadels, archaeologists uncovered fire altars and ritual spaces aligned with celestial events, possible early evidence of proto-Zoroastrian practices. Some scholars argue this might be where the ancient Persian religion took root, with its reverence for fire and cosmic duality. Imagine a priest in this sun-baked land, chanting verses that would one day inspire empires, their words lost to time but their rituals preserved in ashes and clay. Their true legacy, however, might lie in trade. Oxus artifacts, seals, beads, and etched silver have been found as far as Mesopotamia and the Indus Valley, suggesting a network rivaling the later Silk Road. A single Oxus seal could unlock a merchant's warehouse in distant Mohenjo-Daro, proving these weren't isolated outposts but the heart of a continental exchange system. Yet by 1700 BC, their cities emptied, their trade routes fell silent. Climate shifts, invasions, the answers lie buried beneath the dunes, waiting to reveal how a forgotten civilization may have been the invisible hand connecting the ancient world's greatest cultures long before history noticed their name. Along the sun-baked coast of ancient Ecuador, a people emerged with artistry pulsing through their fingertips, the Valdivia culture. Between 3500 and 1800 BCE, while much of the world still shaped crude clay, their hands produced the Americas' earliest known pottery. These weren't just functional vessels, they were miniature masterpieces, sleek bottles with graceful curves, figurines of women with detailed hairstyles that seemed to capture movement itself. Some archaeologists whisper these female statues might represent a mother goddess cult, their exaggerated hips and poised postures hinting at rituals lost to time. What's truly striking is how Valdivia's creativity intertwined with survival. Their villages thrived on a delicate balance, harvesting the ocean's bounty while cultivating early strains of maize and bean. Shell middens taller than a person reveal centuries of sustainable fishing, proving they understood the rhythms of nature long before the term ecology existed. Yet for all their ingenuity, their legacy nearly vanished beneath modern beach resorts until a chance discovery in the 1950s unearthed their story beneath layers of sand. Meanwhile, 1,000 miles south in Argentina's arid valleys, the Norteño culture charted a different path. Where Valdivia expressed themselves through clay, Norteño artists turned canyon walls into canvases. Their rock art, vivid red and ochre paintings of dancing figures, celestial bodies, and enigmatic geometric patterns wasn't mere decoration. These images likely served as sacred maps, guiding rituals or marking seasonal cycles critical to their survival in a harsh landscape. But Norteño's brilliance extended beyond art. Recent excavations reveal something astonishing. Circular stone structures and terraces suggesting early experiments with agriculture in one of the continent's driest regions. Were these the first steps toward domesticating crops like quinoa or potatoes? The evidence is fragmentary but tantalizing. Unlike Valdivia's coastal abundance, Norteño's people innovated out of necessity, their resilience etched into both stone and soil. Two cultures, one continent, each flourishing in wildly different environments. Valdivia's pottery whispers of communal gatherings by the shore, while Norteño's cliffs shout spiritual narratives to the desert wind. One thrived on nature's generosity, the other wrestled with its scarcity. Yet both prove that ancient South America wasn't a passive backdrop to history. It was a stage where diverse human ingenuity took root, blossoming in ways we're only beginning to understand. At the dawn of civilization, where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers carved life into the Mesopotamian plains, an enigmatic people laid the groundwork for all that would follow, yet their story is rarely told. The Ubaid culture, thriving from 6,500 to 3,800 BCE, didn't just precede the Sumerians. They became them through a slow alchemy of innovation and adaptation. Their settlements reveal something extraordinary: the world's first mud brick temples raised on platforms that would evolve into Mesopotamia's iconic ziggurats. These weren't just buildings, they were declarations of human ambition, marking the shift from ancestral worship to organized religion. Inside, archaeologists uncovered eerie figurines, tall, lizard-like beings with elongated heads and almond-shaped eyes clutching infants or cups. Some dismiss them as stylized goddesses, while fringe theorists whisper of prehistoric reptilian deities. The truth: they likely represent a symbolic language we've yet to decipher, a spiritual bridge between Neolithic rituals and the complex pantheons of later Sumer. But the Ubaids' greatest mystery isn't their art, it's their origins. Genetic studies suggest they weren't native to Mesopotamia, but migrants from the Zagros Mountains or beyond, blending with local farmers to birth a new cultural DNA. Their pottery, once plain, suddenly exploded with intricate designs, fish motifs hinting at a reverence for riverine life, geometric patterns mirroring the woven reed houses they built atop marshes. By the time their culture faded into the rise of Uruk and the invention of cuneiform, the Ubaid had already planted seeds that would grow into laws, cities, and epics. Their terracotta figurines may stare silently from museum cases today, but their legacy shouts through millennia. Every ziggurat, every irrigation canal, every clay tablet owes a debt to these forgotten architects of civilization's cradle. Across the windswept plains of Europe, a mysterious network of people left behind clues not in grand monuments but in the curve of a clay cup. The bell beaker culture, named for their iconic inverted bell-shaped pottery, didn't just make vessels. They crafted a cultural revolution that stretched from the Atlantic coast to the Carpathian Basin between 2800 and 1800 BCE. Their distinctive ceramics, adorned with geometric patterns, might seem simple at first glance, but these weren't just containers for food or drink. Chemical residue reveals they held alcoholic brews, possibly used in rituals that bound far-flung communities together in a shared tradition. What's truly fascinating is how these beakers traveled. Identical pottery styles appear in graves from Spain to Hungary, often accompanied by archery equipment and copper daggers. For decades, scholars assumed this meant a single, migrating people, until genetics turned the theory upside down. DNA evidence shows the beaker phenomenon wasn't carried by one group replacing others, but by ideas spreading like wildfire across diverse populations. Think of it as Europe's first viral trend, connecting distant societies through trade, marriage, and perhaps even a shared belief system. Their lasting impact lies in the stones they left standing. The same regions with dense beaker finds also host Europe's most enigmatic megalith stone. Henge's final construction phase aligns with their era. Were they the engineers behind these cosmic calendars? Some argue their knowledge of astronomy and metalworking made them the perfect candidates to refine older stone circles. Others counter that they merely adopted existing sacred sites, adding their own layer of meaning. The debate rages on: civilization or cultural wave. What's undeniable is their silent influence. The beaker people's copper networks laid groundwork for the Bronze Age. Their burial customs hint at early social hierarchies, and their pottery's ubiquitous spread suggests a connectivity that foreshadowed modern Europe. They remind us that sometimes history's most transformative forces aren't empires or armies, but the quiet exchange of a clever idea, fired in a kiln and passed hand to hand across generations. While most Bronze Age cultures were cautiously hugging coastlines, one group of ancient mariners turned the Pacific Ocean into their highway. The Lapita people didn't just cross water. They conquered it, sailing vast stretches of open sea between 1500 and 500 BC with nothing but the stars, wind patterns, and generations of hard-won knowledge to guide them. Their story isn't written on clay tablets or temple walls, but etched into the waves themselves. A trail of intricate pottery shards scattered across islands from Papua New Guinea to Tonga, marking the greatest migration saga most people have never heard. What makes their voyages extraordinary isn't just the distance, though spanning 2,000 miles of uncharted ocean would be impressive even today, but what they carried with them. Each dugout canoe was a floating ark of civilization, packed with taro roots, breadfruit saplings, and domesticated animals. Their signature pottery, stamped with geometric designs using finely toothed combs, wasn't merely decorative. These vessels likely held sacred foods or served as status symbols linking dispersed communities. Archaeologists call them the ancient astronauts of the Pacific for good reason. Like space explorers, they ventured into the unknown with limited supplies, settling harsh new worlds their ancestors had never seen. Linguistic and genetic evidence suggests they're the direct ancestors of modern Polynesian cultures, meaning their bold journeys laid the foundation for societies from Hawaii to New Zealand. Yet the greatest mystery isn't how they navigated, it's why they kept going. Some theories point to population pressure or shifting trade winds. Others suggest a cultural imperative to explore encoded in their oral traditions. Whatever drove them, their legacy lives on in the way a Tahitian fisherman reads ocean swells or a Maori carver chisels ancestral patterns, proving that the true mark of civilization isn't always towering temples, but the courage to sail beyond the horizon. The vast Eurasian steppe has always been a stage for civilization's greatest dramas, but few players were as transformative as two cultures who rode literally into history's spotlight. The Esredni Stog people, grazing their herds between 4,500 and 3,500 BCE, might seem unremarkable at first glance until you spot the clues hidden in their bones. Animal remains from their settlements show something revolutionary: horse teeth worn in ways that suggest bridles. These weren't just hunters stalking wild horses. They were likely the world's first riders, turning swift grassland steeds into partners that would reshape warfare, trade, and human mobility forever. Yet their true legacy lies in what they passed to their successors, the Yamnaya. Emerging around 3,300 BCE, this culture didn't just ride horses, they built an entire identity around them. Their burial mounds or kurgans dot the steppe like silent sentinels, each containing warriors buried with their mounts, axes, and stylized sun wheel symbols. But it's not just their graves that captivate scholars, it's their genes. Genetic studies reveal Yamnaya DNA exploding across Europe and Asia during their era, a migration so vast some call it the steppe tsunami. Were they conquerors, peaceful migrants, or carriers of something even more enduring language? Linguists have long debated the origins of Proto-Indo-European, the mother tongue of hundreds of modern languages from English to Hindi. Strikingly, Yamnaya's timeline and routes align eerily with its hypothesized spread. Their wheeled wagons, pastoral lifestyle, and even reconstructed words for horse and wheel in Proto-Indo-European suggest these nomads didn't just move across continents, they brought the roots of speech itself. Not everyone agrees, of course. Some argue language spread through trade, not migration, or that earlier cultures like Esredni Stog played a bigger role. But one thing's certain: from the first tentative bridles to the echoing words we still speak today, the steppe's whispers shaped our world in ways we're only beginning to measure, not through crumbling walls, but in the very cadence of our voices and the restless spirit of exploration they carried across millennia. Imagine a world where ancient mariners crossed oceans thousands of years earlier than historians ever believed possible, not as isolated cultures, but as links in a vast, forgotten network. This is the tantalizing mystery of the so-called Heliolithic culture, a hypothetical global civilization said to have thrived during prehistory. Proponents point to eerie similarities scattered across continents, massive stone structures aligned with solstices, uncanny artistic parallels in sun symbols, and megalithic building techniques so precise they defy simple coincidence. Take Egypt's pyramids, Peru's step temples, and Cambodia's Angkor Wat. Separated by oceans, these sites share striking features not just in their awe-inspiring scale, but in their celestial precision. Many face sunrise on key solar dates, their corridors mirroring constellations. Even more intriguing, the masonry. From the Andes to the Giza Plateau, builders employed polygonal stonework, interlocking blocks cut at impossible angles without mortar, a technique mainstream archaeology claims developed independently. But could there be another explanation? Some researchers argue these aren't random parallels, but footprints of a seafaring culture that mapped the globe long before Columbus. Theories range from plausible to provocative. Maybe these travelers weren't conquerors but knowledge-bearers sharing astronomy, engineering, and spiritual beliefs with indigenous cultures. Sun worship appears everywhere, from Celtic solstice markers to Mesoamerican solar deities with eerily similar iconography. Could this suggest a shared origin? Yet mainstream archaeology remains unconvinced. Carbon dating often places these sites centuries apart, and no concrete evidence like shipwrecks or trade goods ties them directly. Critics argue humans are simply good at solving similar problems in similar ways. If you need to track seasons, you'll study the sun. If you want lasting monuments, you'll stack stones. The ocean, they say, was an impassable barrier until much later. Still, the questions linger. How did Bronze Age cultures quarry, transport, and erect 100-ton stones with such mathematical precision? Why do flood myths and solar motifs repeat across unconnected continents? Whether myth or lost history, the Heliolithic theory challenges us to rethink humanity's earliest chapters not as isolated footnotes, but as pages that might once have been part of the same earth-spanning story. Before cuneiform scratched its first symbols into clay, before Gilgamesh became legend, there rose a city that changed humanity forever. Uruk wasn't just another settlement, it was an explosion of urban innovation, a place where the very idea of civilization took shape around 4000 BCE. Picture this: 30,000 people living within towering mud brick walls, their skyline dominated by the White Temple, a ziggurat so massive its platform could swallow 2 football fields. This wasn't just architecture, it was a declaration that humans could reshape the world on an unimaginable scale. What set Uruk apart wasn't just its size but its systems. Without writing, they invented tools for bureaucracy: cylinder seals. These tiny stone rollers, etched with intricate designs, were pressed into clay to mark ownership, trades, or contracts. Each spin told a story: a temple's grain stores, a merchant's promise, the heartbeat of a society learning to organize itself. Archaeologists have found thousands, some as far away as Egypt and Turkey, proving Uruk's influence stretched across the ancient world. But the real revolution happened in the shadows of those ziggurats. Uruk's artisans didn't just build, they imagined. Their pottery wheels churned out standardized bowls by the thousands, suggesting early mass production. Their artists carved hauntingly beautiful alabaster faces, the earliest known attempts at portraiture. Even their religion broke new ground, with deities like Inanna, goddess of love and war, evolving from local spirits into figures worshipped across Mesopotamia for millennia. Then came the turning point. Around 3200 BCE, scribes began pressing reeds into clay, creating the world's first writing, not for poetry or kings, but for receipts. These early cuneiform tablets tracked beer rations and sheep counts, the mundane foundation of what would become literature, law, and history. Uruk's greatest legacy wasn't its walls or temples, but the moment symbols ceased to be pictures and became ideas. catapulting humanity from prehistory into a new era where words could outlast empires. Yet for all its brilliance, Uruk's dominance wasn't eternal. As other cities adopted its innovations, the first city gradually faded, its name surviving mostly in myth. But its DNA lived on. In every Mesopotamian ziggurat, every bureaucratic seal, every line of cuneiform that followed, Uruk proved something radical, that when humans gather in great enough numbers, we don't just build cities, we reinvent what it means to be human. High in the arid mesas and canyons of the American Southwest, long before the iconic cliff dwellings captured the world's imagination, a quiet revolution in survival was unfolding. The ancestral pueblones, often called the basket makers, didn't start with towering stone villages. Their story begins humbly, in circular pits dug deep into the earth, roofed with timber and mud. These sunken homes weren't just shelters, they were masterclasses in adaptation, keeping families warm through bitter winters and cool during scorching summers. But what truly set these early people apart wasn't their architecture, it was what they carried in their hands. Their baskets weren't mere containers, they were feats of engineering. Tightly woven from yucca fibers and rabbit brush, some so finely crafted they could hold water without a single drop seeping through. Imagine the skill required to coil strands so precisely, creating designs that doubled as both art and utility. Traps for small game, cradles for infants, even cooking vessels where hot stones could boil stews. These weren't just tools, they were the lifelines of a society learning to thrive in a land that gave little. As centuries passed, their innovation stacked up, literally. The pit houses grew shallower, rising above ground with stone foundations, hinting at the Pueblo architecture to come. They began cultivating maize, adapting desert farming techniques that would later sustain their grandest cities. Yet for all their progress, traces of the basket maker era remain sparse. No written records, no epic monuments, just the silent testimony of charred corn kernels, worn grinding stones, and those astonishing baskets preserved by the dry desert air. What's most striking isn't how much they left behind, but how little they needed to flourish. Without metal, without beasts of burden, they turned fiber into technology and pits into homes, proving civilization isn't defined by grandeur, but by the quiet ingenuity of people bending an unforgiving world to their will. Deep in the swampy lowlands of Mexico's Gulf Coast, a civilization emerged that would plant the seeds for every great Mesoamerican empire to follow. The Olmecs, flourishing from 1500 to 400 BCE, didn't just build cities, they invented the cultural blueprint for the Maya, Aztec, and beyond. Long before their successors carved intricate calendars or raised towering pyramids, these pioneers were mastering technologies that still baffle modern archaeologists. Take their most iconic legacy, the colossal stone heads, carved from single blocks of basalt weighing up to 20 tons. These helmeted giants with flattened noses and stoic expressions weren't just art, they were statements of power. But here's the puzzle. The nearest basalt quarries lay 50 miles away across rivers and marshes. Without wheels or draft animals, how did they transport these monoliths? Some theories suggest massive rafts and log rollers, while indigenous oral histories whisper of ancient sound technology that softened stone. Whatever the method, the Olmec's engineering prowess hints at a society far more sophisticated than we once believed. Then there's their most surprising innovation, rubber. Centuries before vulcanization was patented, Olmec artisans were processing latex from local trees to create balls for ritual games, waterproof seals, and even rudimentary adhesives. The remains of their ball courts, complete with rubber-sheathed playing surfaces, suggest these weren't just sports but sacred events with cosmic significance, possibly reenacting myths of creation and sacrifice. But the greatest controversy swirls around their potential global connections. Artifacts like jade celts carved with eerily Chinese-like motifs and depictions of bearded figures, uncommon among Native Americans, have fueled theories of transoceanic contact. Could Olmec traders have ventured across the Pacific or received visitors from afar? Mainstream archaeology remains skeptical, but one thing's certain: their influence rippled across continents of time. When later civilizations spoke of the place of reeds where gods bestowed knowledge, they may have been remembering the Olmec swamps where humanity's first steps toward Mesoamerican greatness left footprints we're still deciphering today. Beneath the jungles of Indonesia lies a structure so controversial it could rewrite humanity's entire timeline. Gunung Padang isn't just a hill, it's a massive, terraced megalith some researchers believe hides the world's oldest pyramid beneath its surface. Core samples reveal layers of man-made construction dating back an astonishing 20,000 years, far older than any known civilization. Mainstream archaeologists remain skeptical, pointing to natural geological formations, but if proven artificial, this site would shatter our understanding of when advanced societies first emerged. Now plunge into the crystal-clear waters off Cuba's western coast, where eerie geometric shapes stretch across the ocean floor. First spotted by sonar in 2001, these symmetrical structures resembling roads, arches, and even possible pyramids sit nearly 2,000 feet below sea level. Given that sea levels were last that low over 10,000 years ago, who could have built them? Some point to legends of Atlantis or lost Mesoamerican seafarers, while geologists argue these could be rare but natural sandstone formations. The debate rages on with tantalizing questions still unanswered. Then there's Japan's Yonaguni Monument, a submerged terraced formation off Okinawa that looks uncannily like a sunken city. Marine archaeologists are divided. Are these precise right angles and staircases the work of an ancient tsunami-vanished culture, or just a quirk of tectonic activity? Unlike the others, Yonaguni has yielded tools and carvings, fueling speculation about a Pacific civilization lost to rising waters. What binds these sites together isn't just their mystery, it's their challenge to our linear view of progress. If even one proves artificial, it suggests advanced societies may have risen, collapsed, and been forgotten long before Sumer or Egypt. Until then, they remain history's most tantalizing what-ifs, reminding us that the past might be far stranger and far more complex than textbooks dare to admit. Across oceans and epochs, these lost civilizations whisper eerily similar stories, as if humanity's earliest chapters were written with the same invisible ink. Look closely and patterns emerge like constellations in the night sky. Nearly every culture we've explored aligned their temples with celestial events, not just for practical calendars, but because they saw the heavens as sacred blueprints. The Olmecs, Norte Chico, even distant Liangzhu all oriented pyramids to solstices, suggesting a shared reverence for cosmic order that transcended geography. Then there's the deluge. From Mesopotamia's epic of Gilgamesh to the Andes flood myths, catastrophic water narratives ripple through oral traditions worldwide. Scholars once dismissed these as local disasters until ice core data revealed a chilling truth. Around 12,000 years ago, melting glaciers caused sea levels to rise nearly 400 feet. Could these stories be ancestral memories of shorelines swallowed whole, passed down through generations? The submerged ruins off Cuba and Japan's Yonaguni Monument hint that our ancestors might have witnessed civilizations vanishing beneath the waves. Technologies too tell a tantalizing tale. Copper smelting appears abruptly around 5,500 BC in the Balkans, Peru, and Mesopotamia regions with no apparent contact. The Vinca Culture's metallurgy mirrors techniques used by the Norte Chico, while both crafted eerily similar goddess figurines. Coincidence or fragments of a forgotten knowledge web woven across continents before history's loom unraveled it. Most provocative are the stylistic echoes that defy conventional timelines. The serpent motifs carved by the Olmecs mirror dragons from ancient Chinese jades. The stepped pyramids of Caral bear uncanny resemblance to ziggurats built millennia later in Iraq. Even the mysterious lizard folk figurines of the Ubaid culture find bizarre parallels in Aboriginal Australian Dreamtime art. Mainstream archaeology insists these are parallel innovations, human minds solving similar problems in similar ways. But as we piece together our past, one truth becomes undeniable. Whether by shared ancestry, lost voyages, or cosmic inspiration, these civilizations weren't isolated dots on a map. They were threads in a tapestry far more interconnected and far older than we ever imagined. Perhaps history isn't a straight line but a spiral, with ancient wisdom rising, falling, and resurfacing in ways we're only beginning to trace. For centuries, these lost civilizations remained hidden beneath jungle canopies and desert sands until now. Today's archaeologists aren't just digging with shovels, they're wielding technology straight out of science fiction. Take LiDAR, for example. By pulsing lasers from aircraft through dense vegetation, researchers peel back layers of time like never before. In Guatemala, this revealed 60,000 Mayan structures in just a few sweeps, entire cities invisible to the naked eye. But it's not just about finding buildings. Sediment cores drilled from ancient lakebeds act as climate diaries. Layers of pollen and ash tell us when droughts struck the ancestral pueblones or monsoons drowned the Liangzhu, turning speculation into hard evidence. The real game changer: DNA doesn't lie. Genetic studies on skeletal remains have rewritten migration maps entirely. The Yamnaya steppe ancestry wasn't just folklore, it's etched in the genes of modern Europeans. Even Ötzi the Iceman, preserved for 5,000 years in alpine ice, had living relatives traced through mitochondrial DNA. And let's not forget satellite archaeology. High-resolution imagery from orbit uncovers buried ruins by spotting subtle differences in soil moisture or crop growth, leading to discoveries like a potential Neolithic henge in Ireland or lost caravan routes in Arabia's empty quarter. But here's the twist: sometimes the smallest clues pack the biggest punch. Residue analysis on pottery shards reveals whether a vessel held wine, opium, or fermented fish sauce, proof of trade networks stretching further than we imagined. Meanwhile, 3D modeling reconstructs shattered artifacts digitally, letting us handle a delicate Valdivia figurine or reassemble a smashed Minoan fresco without touching a single fragment. The most humbling realization: we've barely scratched the surface. Every scan, every soil sample peels back another layer, showing us that these civilizations weren't just footnotes, they were titans. And with each technological leap, we're not just uncovering their stories, we're finally listening. Our journey through these forgotten societies does more than just add pages to history. It shatters the very lens through which we view human progress. For centuries, we've imagined civilization as a straight line, ascending steadily from primitive beginnings to modern complexity. But the Vinca's copper tools, the Norte Chico's desert metropolises, and the Lapita's daring ocean voyages reveal a far more thrilling truth: brilliance isn't confined to a single time or place. These cultures innovated, adapted, and sometimes vanished, not because they failed, but because history's spotlight simply moved elsewhere. What's most humbling isn't just their achievements, but their resilience. The Tairona retreated into mountains rather than surrender their identity. The Sanxingdui buried their treasures rather than let them be erased. Even the Ubaid, whose ziggurats inspired Mesopotamia, fade into obscurity, yet their ideas outlived them by millennia. Progress, it seems, isn't a ladder but a mosaic, with each piece reflecting a different way to thrive. And that leads us to the greatest mystery of all. If societies this advanced could disappear so completely, their cities swallowed by jungles, their names lost to time, what else might still lie hidden? Beneath Arctic ice or Saharan sands, could there be ruins rewriting our origins yet again? Which of these civilizations resonated most with you, the star-aligned builders of Caral, the seafaring Lapita, or another culture we've uncovered today? Share your thoughts below, because the most exciting chapters of human history might still be waiting for us to turn the page.